If you're older and still sexually active, these 7 truths have a real impact on your health, your relationships, and how long you live. Most doctors won't mention this during your annual physical. They'll take your blood pressure, go over your medications, maybe ask how you're sleeping, but they'll almost never ask about your intimate life. That silence is costing older adults their health, their relationships, and sometimes even years of their lives. If you're over 60 and still having sex, or wish you were, what happens in your bedroom isn't separate from your overall health. It's directly tied to how long you live, how sharp your mind stays, how strong your heart remains, and whether the relationship you've spent decades building can survive the quiet changes age brings. What you're about to hear isn't what most people your age are discussing, but it's exactly what they need to hear. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, something is going to shift for you. Truth 1. Sex after 60 isn't just about pleasure. It's medicine. The wellness industry spends billions trying to sell you this in pill form. Your own body can produce it for free. Regular sexual activity in older adults isn't a luxury or a lifestyle choice. It's a clinically documented health intervention. And the research backing this isn't obscure. It's consistent, peer-reviewed, and largely ignored in the conversations older adults actually have with their doctors. When you're intimate, your brain releases a cascade of hormones, oxytocin, dopamine, and endorphins, that do measurable work inside your body. Oxytocin alone lowers cortisol, the stress hormone that, when chronically high, speeds up cellular aging, weakens your immune system, and increases inflammation throughout your body. Inflammation, as most people over 60 have heard by now, is the hidden driver behind heart disease, cognitive decline, and arthritis. Intimacy is one of the most natural anti-inflammatory tools available to you, and it costs nothing. A major study published in the New England Journal of Medicine followed adults between 57 and 85 and found that 73% of those aged 57 to 64 were still sexually active. Even more important, those who kept an active, intimate life consistently reported higher life satisfaction, stronger emotional resilience, and better self-rated health than those who didn't. These weren't young people. These were people in your age group living fuller lives, partly because they refused to give up this dimension of health. The heart benefits alone are worth paying attention to. Sex raises your heart rate, improves circulation, and works muscle groups in ways similar to moderate aerobic exercise. For older adults whose mobility might limit traditional workouts, that's no small thing. A study from Queen's University Belfast found that men who were sexually active 3 or more times per week had a significantly lower risk of heart attack and stroke. The reason is simple. The heart is a muscle, and regularly raising your heart rate gently keeps it conditioned. Then there's sleep. Older adults often struggle with sleep quality, and poor sleep is one of the best documented accelerators of physical and mental aging. The hormone prolactin, released after climax, promotes deep restorative sleep in ways most sleep aids can't match without side effects. If you've been chasing better sleep with supplements and bedtime routines, this truth might reframe the whole conversation. Consider the story of a 67-year-old man whose doctor was genuinely puzzled by his unusually low blood pressure and inflammation markers during a routine checkup. He wasn't on a special diet. He wasn't doing intense exercise. When the doctor finally asked more detailed lifestyle questions, the answer was surprisingly simple. He and his wife of 38 years had kept a warm, steady, intimate life, and neither had ever thought of it as a health strategy. They thought of it as love. Turns out, those two things aren't as different as we assume. Has your doctor ever described intimacy as part of your health plan? Drop a yes or no in the comments. The answers might surprise you, and they'll definitely tell us something important. Truth 2, your body has changed. That's not a failure. One of the most quietly damaging beliefs older adults carry into their 60s and 70s is this: if sex feels different than it used to, something has gone wrong. That belief leads to avoidance. Avoidance leads to silence. And silence, as you'll hear throughout this video, is the real enemy, not age and not your body. After 60, your hormonal landscape shifts significantly. In women, dropping estrogen after menopause brings changes that are both common and often untreated. Vaginal atrophy, thinning, drying, and reduced elasticity of vaginal tissue affects nearly 50% of postmenopausal women. It can make physical intimacy uncomfortable or even painful, yet research consistently shows fewer than 25% of women with this condition ever discuss it with their doctor. The reason is almost always the same: embarrassment, or the assumption that discomfort is just what aging feels like and has to be endured. It doesn't have to be. Safe, well-established treatments exist, from topical estrogen therapies to non-hormonal moisturizers and lubricants, that gynecologists and general practitioners can prescribe or recommend. The barrier isn't medical, it's conversational. Women aren't bringing it up, and doctors aren't asking. For men over 60, declining testosterone creates a different but equally real set of changes. Libido may drop. Erections may take longer to develop and need more direct stimulation than at 40. Emotional sensitivity during intimacy may increase. These aren't signs of dysfunction, they are signs of a body operating under a different hormonal profile. The problem arises when men interpret these changes as personal failure rather than a physiological shift, and then withdraw from intimacy entirely, never telling their partner why. Partners on both sides often experience that withdrawal as rejection. A woman whose husband has quietly pulled away due to performance anxiety may spend months thinking she's no longer attractive to him. A man whose wife avoids intimacy because of physical discomfort may spend months thinking she's lost interest in him. Both are suffering in silence under the same roof, over problems that are medically solvable and relationally healable, if only someone starts the conversation. A 63-year-old woman spent 2 years avoiding physical intimacy with her husband after menopause made it consistently uncomfortable. She said nothing. She assumed this was simply her new reality. It took one appointment with a new gynecologist, one who specifically asked about intimate health, to change the course of her marriage. Within 3 months of starting a prescribed topical treatment, she described the change not just physically, but emotionally, as if a wall she had quietly built around herself had come down. Your body hasn't failed you. It has changed, and change, when you understand it, is something you can work with. Has your body changed in ways that surprised you after 60? You're not alone. Share your experience in the comments. Your words could be exactly what someone else needs to read today. Truth 3. STI don't retire when you do. This truth is uncomfortable. It's also urgent, and the discomfort people feel about it is exactly why it causes so much preventable harm in the senior population every single year. STI rates among adults over 55 have risen dramatically over the past decade. The CDC has tracked consistent year-over-year increases in chlamydia, gonorrhea, syphilis, and herpes among older adults, a population that public health messaging has largely ignored in favor of teens and young adults. The assumption built into that messaging is the same one in most cultural narratives about older adults, that sex isn't really happening, so risk isn't really present. That assumption is wrong. and dangerous, several factors explain the increase. Widespread availability of erectile dysfunction medications has brought many older men back to sexual activity after years away. Sometimes in new relationships after divorce or widowhood, sometimes without updated knowledge about protection. The social landscape for adults over 60 has shifted dramatically, with online dating platforms now heavily used by seniors, creating more new sexual partnerships than previous generations experienced at this life stage. And critically, older immune systems are less equipped to quickly neutralize infections that a younger body might suppress with fewer consequences. There's also the issue of testing. Older adults are rarely offered STI screenings during routine medical visits unless they specifically ask. Many don't ask either because they don't see themselves as at risk or because the conversation feels too awkward to start. The result, infections go undetected longer, cause more damage, and are more likely to be passed to partners who are equally unaware. HIV deserves special attention here. While HIV is now a manageable chronic condition with modern antiretroviral therapy, older adults are diagnosed at later stages on average than younger patients, meaning more damage has already occurred before treatment begins. A 70-year-old woman re-entered the dating world after her husband of 45 years died. She had no framework for thinking about this risk. She'd never needed one. One relationship, one unprotected encounter with a partner who didn't know his own status, led to a diagnosis that arrived only because her doctor unusually ordered a comprehensive screening panel. Early detection gave her access to treatment that has kept her healthy and active for the 8 years since. But she'll tell anyone who listens. She wishes someone had told her this truth before she had to live it. Protection doesn't expire. Conversations about sexual health don't have an age limit. And asking your doctor for an STI screening isn't an admission of anything. It's an act of self-respect and care for the people you love. The next truth may change how you see your relationship entirely, because it reveals what actually holds intimacy together after 60, and it's not what most people expect. Truth 4. Emotional intimacy becomes the foundation, not the bonus. Ask most people in their 30s what makes a satisfying, intimate life, and the answers will center heavily on the physical. Ask someone in their late 60s or 70s who's genuinely thriving in their relationship, and the answer almost always sounds different. Something has shifted. The physical is still present and valued, but it no longer carries the relationship alone. Something deeper is doing the heavy lifting, and that something is emotional intimacy. Research from the University of Michigan's National Poll on Healthy Aging found that emotional closeness was the single strongest predictor of relationship satisfaction among adults over 65, more predictive than physical frequency, physical health status, or even relationship length. Couples who felt genuinely seen, heard, and emotionally safe with their partner consistently rated their intimate lives as more satisfying than couples with more frequent physical contact, but less emotional depth. This finding has enormous practical implications. It means the couples most likely to maintain a rich, connected, intimate life into their 70s and 80s aren't necessarily the ones with the fewest physical limitations. They're the ones who have invested most deeply in knowing each other, in talking honestly, in creating the emotional conditions where vulnerability feels safe rather than threatening. And yet, emotional intimacy is the dimension of relationship health most couples have done the least deliberate work on. Many long-term couples have spent decades operating in parallel, raising kids, managing finances, navigating careers without ever developing a language for their inner emotional lives. When the children leave, when the career ends, when the body begins to change, that unspoken gap suddenly becomes very loud. Couples therapists who work specifically with older adults consistently report the same pattern. It's not physical limitation that ends intimacy in long-term relationships after 60. It's emotional disconnection that was present long before 60, but masked by the noise of a busy life. When the noise quiets, the disconnection becomes impossible to ignore. A couple married for 42 years nearly separated at age 68, not because of infidelity, not because of physical incapacity, but because they had spent 4 decades being excellent logistics partners and almost complete strangers in emotional depth. The husband described it as living with someone you care about very much, but never quite reach. One session with a couples therapist where both were simply asked to describe what they needed from the other person, not what they wanted to change, just what they needed, opened a door neither had known how to find. They described the following 3 years as the most intimate of their marriage. Do you think emotional connection matters more than physical intimacy after 60? There's no wrong answer. Tell us what you think in the comments. Truth 5. Your medications are quietly affecting your sex life. This is the truth most couples argue about for years without ever identifying the real cause. One partner's interest changes. The other takes it personally. Distance grows, resentment builds, and the actual explanation is sitting in a prescription bottle on the nightstand. Most adults over 60 take at least 1 prescription medication. Many take 5 or more. What most patients are never clearly told, and what most physicians don't routinely discuss, is that a significant number of the most common medications for older adults have direct, documented effects on libido, arousal, emotional availability, and physical response during intimacy. SSRIs commonly prescribed for depression and anxiety are among the best known libido suppressants. They can reduce sexual desire, delay or prevent climax, and create a generalized emotional flatness that makes intimacy feel less meaningful even when the desire to connect is genuinely there. Beta blockers, widely prescribed for blood pressure and heart conditions, can reduce sexual response in both men and women. Antihistamines reduce natural lubrication in women. Certain antihypertensives affect erectile function in men. Diuretics can cause fatigue and reduce sensitivity. The list is long, and it overlaps significantly with the standard medication profile of a healthy, well-managed 65-year-old. The critical point is this: in most cases, alternatives exist. A different medication in the same class, a dosage adjustment, a complementary intervention. A prescribing physician or pharmacist who knows that your intimate quality of life matters to you can often find a path that doesn't force you to choose between your heart health and your relationship, but that conversation requires you to start it, and most people don't because the subject feels too personal, too embarrassing, or too trivial to raise with a medical professional. It's none of those things. Sexual health is health. Bringing it up with your doctor isn't oversharing. It's advocating for yourself fully. A 66-year-old man spent almost 2 years assuming his declining interest in his wife of 30 years was just what aging felt like. He didn't mention it to anyone. His wife interpreted it as a loss of attraction and quietly began grieving the relationship she thought she was losing. It was a pharmacist doing a routine medication review who identified 2 of his 5 prescriptions as likely contributors. 1 dosage adjustment and 1 medication swap, both approved by his physician, produced changes he described as genuinely unexpected within 90 days. His wife described it as getting her husband back. Your medications may be doing exactly what they're supposed to do for your heart, your mood, and your blood pressure, and also doing something to your intimate life that nobody thought to warn you about. Ask the question. It may change everything. Truth 6 connects your intimate life directly to how long you'll actually live. And the science behind it is more specific than most people realize. Stay with me. Truth 6. frequency and longevity are directly linked. Here's the science. If you needed one more reason to take your intimate life seriously as a dimension of health, not just a personal or relational matter, this is it. Multiple independent, peer-reviewed studies across different populations and decades have now established a measurable, statistically significant link between sexual activity in older adults and longer lifespan. The pathways are multiple and cumulative. The heart benefit we've already discussed, but the cognitive dimension deserves its own attention. Sexual activity stimulates the brain through multiple channels at once: neurochemical release, physical sensation, emotional engagement, novelty, and focused present moment awareness. Research published in the journals of gerontology found that older adults who stayed sexually active scored significantly higher on tests of memory and executive function than those who didn't. That stimulation appears to support neural connectivity in brain regions tied to memory formation and emotional regulation, the same regions most vulnerable to age-related decline. The immune benefit is equally documented. Regular intimacy has been linked to higher levels of immunoglobulin A, an antibody that serves as one of the body's first lines of defense against infection, in a population whose immune function is already naturally declining. That's a meaningful boost to resilience and recovery. A Duke University longitudinal study that tracked adults over 60 for more than 2 decades found that enjoyment of sex, not just frequency, but genuine satisfaction, was a significant predictor of longevity, especially in women. It was one of the few lifestyle variables that consistently predicted longer life, independent of physical health status at the start of the study. For men, a separate study found that those who reported regular sexual activity over a 10-year period had a 50% lower mortality risk than those who were sexually inactive. 50% is not a marginal finding. It's the kind of number that belongs in every conversation about healthy aging. The mental health contribution may be the most direct longevity pathway of all. Chronic depression is one of the most significant risk factors for early mortality in older adults. It weakens immune function, disrupts sleep, reduces motivation to maintain healthy behaviors, and increases physiological stress on virtually every organ system. Sexual intimacy, through its hormonal, neurochemical, and relational benefits, is one of the most effective natural interventions against depression available to older adults. Not a replacement for professional treatment when needed, but a genuinely powerful complementary factor. Consider the story of 2 brothers, both 72, both in similar physical health at the start of a decade. One remained in an active, emotionally connected relationship. The other lost his wife and made no new intimate connections over the following years. By the time both were 80, the differences in their cognitive sharpness, physical vitality, immune resilience, and emotional stability were striking and measurable in their medical records. Their genetics were nearly identical. Their intimate lives were not. Does this link between intimacy and longevity surprise you, or did some part of you already sense it? Tell us in the comments. This conversation matters. Truth 7. The conversation you've been avoiding is the one that could save everything. Every truth in this video points to the same place: the medications quietly affecting your relationship. Solvable with a conversation. The physical changes causing avoidance and shame, addressable with a conversation. The emotional disconnection that has been growing for years, healed by a conversation. The STI risk most seniors don't know they carry, prevented by a conversation. The longevity benefits of intimacy that most doctors never mention, unlocked by a conversation. The single most powerful thing you can do for your sexual health, your relationship, and your longevity right now is to begin, or restart, an honest, open conversation with your partner, with your doctor, with yourself. Research shows that 68% of adults over 60 have never had a direct conversation with their physician about sexual health. Yet 80% of that same group say they wish their doctor would bring it up. That gap between what people need and what they're actually receiving isn't a medical failure. It's a conversational one, and unlike a diagnosis or a prescription, a conversation is something you can initiate today. With a partner, the most effective conversations aren't built on complaints or comparisons to how things used to be. They're built on curiosity and honesty. 3 specific conversation starters that relationship therapists have validated for couples over 60. I want to understand what feels good for you now, not 5 years ago. Can we talk about that? There's something I've wanted to tell you about what I need that I haven't found the words for yet. Can I try? I've noticed we've been distant, and I don't want to pretend that's okay. Can we figure out what's changed together? None of these require perfect timing or perfect words. They require only the decision to stop waiting for the other person to start. A 71-year old woman had been silent about her intimate needs for so long that she'd nearly convinced herself they didn't exist anymore. She didn't raise the subject aloud. Instead, she wrote her husband of 30 years a letter. Not a complaint, not an ultimatum. A letter describing, as honestly as she'd ever been with anyone, what she had been feeling, what she had been missing, and what she hoped was still possible between them. He read it twice, came to find her in the kitchen, sat down, and said 4 words, "I needed this, too." The letter she had delayed writing for 3 years became the foundation of what both described as the richest, most honest season of their entire marriage. Age is not the enemy of intimacy, silence is. The men and women living the longest, most connected, most fully realized lives after 60 aren't the ones who got lucky with biology. They're the ones who chose honesty over embarrassment, vulnerability over pride, and conversation over comfortable silence every single time. Everything you heard today points to one undeniable truth. Your intimate life after 60 is not a footnote to the rest of your health. It is woven through all of it: your heart, your mind, your immune system, your emotional resilience, and the relationships that give your days meaning. The people who thrive in this season of life aren't the ones who surrender intimacy to the assumptions of aging. They're the ones who fight for it quietly, wisely, and honestly, with their partners, with their doctors, and with themselves. You now have knowledge that most people your age don't have. The question is simply what you choose to do with it. One conversation, one appointment, one honest moment. That's all transformation ever requires to begin. If this video opened something in you today, a thought you'd been avoiding, a conversation you'd been delaying, a truth you recognized in your own life, then it did exactly what it was made to do. You deserve honest, accurate information about every dimension of your health, and that includes this one. Do one thing right now. Share this video with someone over 60 who needs to hear it, not because it's uncomfortable, but because it could genuinely change the quality and length of their life. If this kind of real, research-backed content speaks to you, hit subscribe so you never miss a video made specifically for this season of your life. And if you found value here today, the like button is the simplest way to tell us it mattered. We read every comment, and we build every video around what you actually need. So tell us below which truth hit closest to home for you. We want to know. And before you go, watch this next video right here, because what your body is quietly signaling after 60 is something every older adult needs to understand before it becomes something harder. Reverse, we'll see you there.